Learning Module 2.1 will continue to explore the literature review assignment and give you the necessary strategies for succeeding at this difficult but rewarding and necessary writing task. In this module, we'll cover some of the specific questions to get you started organizing sources, the best way to use the synthesis matrix from LM3.2 to describe patterns in research, ways of structuring a literature review, and a general list of do's and don'ts for this kind of assignment. To review from the last learning module, a literature review is an account of what has been published on a topic by accredited scholars and researchers. Essentially, you are describing the state of the academic conversation on a topic. You decided on what that topic is in LM2.2, the individual topic proposal. You located and summarized sources related to that topic in the annotated bibliography. Now, your job is to make meaning of those sources and try to draw connections between them. Your reader should come away from a literature review with an understanding of what the basic ideas and concepts are related to your research question. It can help to think about the literature review as a critical multi-book book report. You are making an argument in a lit review, but that argument is pretty much going to be, this is the current state of research on X, and this is where the gaps in the research are on X. The logical place to begin working on the literature review is with the annotated bibliography you've already completed. The whole purpose of the annotated bibliography was to give you the raw material for the literature review. In the annotated bibliography, you had to summarize sources, locate relevant quotations, and craft a reasoned introduction for the entire document. The literature review adds synthesis of the sources to that mix of rhetorical purposes. Begin by organizing your sources from the annotated bibliography. Develop a strategy for putting them together to represent relationships. Once you determine how the sources are in conversation with one another, you'll essentially have an outline for the literature review. As you are trying to think about relationships between sources and what some of the main points of conversation and contention are among your sources, there are some basic questions you can ask about each source. Use the following questions to take notes about your sources, above and beyond the annotations you've already written. Don't think about your sources in isolation. Think about how they relate to one another and what the big picture looks like. First, ask what the overall position of an article is. We've already established that a good research question, and thus a good research topic, lends itself to positions and arguments. If you've done your reading in the craft of research, you know the qualities of a productive and viable topic. A good topic should lend itself to various positions. Think about what the thesis statement is for each article. Next, think about the differences and similarities of the article's positions. Is there much consensus, or do several of your sources disagree? What is the disagreement about? Where is the overlap in terms of positions? And where is the contention? For each source, ask yourself how the authors justify their research. How do they explain the significance of the work they are publishing? How do they establish credibility in the field? Does an author's source identify a specific area of need in the existing scholarship into which they neatly fit? Then, think about how they are using evidence. What kind of evidence are they using in the first place? Quantitative, qualitative, some combination? What weaknesses do you perceive to be part of the extant evidence? Also, think about where evidence overlaps. Do different sources refer to the same foundational study? Do they use similar methods? Do sources with similar positions also employ similar evidence? Finally, and most importantly, when you look at all the sources as a whole, do you see any gaps in the research? What are some issues that aren't covered in your sources that you think need to be addressed? You've already laid out your own research topic. Think about how your idea fits into the existing work. Ideally, you will identify a gap in the scholarship into which your own research project fits later on. You can use a synthesis matrix to organize your responses to these questions and to help generate some meaning out of your source inquiry. You have to create a synthesis matrix for RT3.1, but I want to talk about what you can do with this type of chart more generally, and I think it can be a useful tool for different types of research problems. See Blackboard for the specific instructions for RT3.1. This module will stick to going over how the synthesis matrix actually works. A synthesis matrix is a tool to help visualize where sources fit together. Think of synthesis as the opposite of analysis. If you are analyzing something, like a book or a movie, you are essentially taking it apart to find meaning. In synthesis, you're putting things together to find meaning. In this case, you are putting together academic sources to make meaning. The synthesis matrix puts sources on the horizontal axis and main ideas on the vertical axis. Be sure you clearly identify each source on the horizontal axis so you don't accidentally lose track of something later on. If we look at the example matrix here, you'll see what it can look like. Let's assume our topic is women in World War II. Suppose in all the reading we've done, the two main ideas that seem to come up are alternation of women's roles because of World War II, and hardships and oppositions women faced. Across the horizontal axis of the matrix, we have placed the authors' names from our sources. In the boxes are paraphrases and quotations that have to do with the main idea from the vertical axis. Notice that each of the paraphrases and quotes has a page number citation from the source. This is important. You'll want to be able to go back and find an idea in your source when you start to write the literature review. You'll also note that the opposing viewpoint isn't necessarily represented in its own sources. As you can see, this chart points out quotations and paraphrases from the sources that might suggest that times have not changed very much for women. After your chart is complete, notice patterns of information. You may find that your sources at times discuss very similar material, or that they sometimes deal with completely different aspects of your topic. These patterns can be useful in creating a thesis statement that can guide your writing and keep you focused as you begin your draft.